This is the American Forces Network, Europe.
It's 10 o'clock in Central Europe. Henry Kissinger returns to Washington from the secret Indo-China peace talks in Paris, and more appointments are announced for President Nixon's second term.
The 10 o'clock report, an expanded summary of world developments compiled from the wires of the AP and UPI with reports from the major American networks.
John Wood, AFN News reporting. 15 astronauts on the moon, Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, are awake and preparing for their final lunar excursion in about an hour and 25 minutes from now. Mission Control says the moonwalk is to start about 11:30, an hour earlier than had been indicated earlier. NBC News at the Apollo Space Center reports that Cernan and Schmitt are extremely pleased with their geological findings on the moon, especially some orange-colored soil.
Cernan and Schmitt seem sure they collected some of the oldest and youngest geological specimens on the moon. Rocks from an ancient avalanche that could date back to moon's creation, possibly more than 4.5 billion years, and some orange-colored soil, which excited them even more.
Wait a minute. What? Where are the reflections? I've been fooling. There is orange soil. Well, don't move it till I see it. It's all over. Orange. Don't move it till I see it. I've stirred it up with my feet. Hey, it is. I can see it from here. It's orange. Wait, I put my visor up. It's still orange. Sure it is. Crazy.
Geologists at Houston say they won't know for certain what the orange soil is until they've studied it on the ground. Wilson Hall on the NBC Apollo Space Center.
The Apollo 17 will lift off from the moon shortly before midnight tomorrow, and AFN will broadcast that live at 11:45 p.m.
I'll be on my way. What kind of TTV? Okay, got it. Okay, Jack, and how about taking the suit circle relief bound cycle it just to open and then back to auto? Okay, Bob, stand by. Suit circuit relief, going open and auto. That's done. I'll be watching for a minute here and let you know.
There's a very lengthy checklist procedure.
Okay, Bob, I'm going down the ladder. Roger, Gino.
It takes an hour and a half for the astronauts to put on their spacesuits and then go through a very careful checklist. Remember, their lives are wrapped up inside the crew, their spacesuit.
Apollo 17.
Oh, there's Gene again.
Oh, Gene, amen.
Reading the little,
Okay, Bob, I'm on the pad.
he's outside already.
And about 4:30, a Wednesday afternoon, as I step out onto the plains of taurus-littrow. Beautiful valley. The first thing I'll do is I'll turn the TTE on and I'll give you a reading.
Okay, he's saying he sneaked up on us there. They opened the hatch and he backed out of it in a hurry this time. Went past the little plaque which reads, "Godspeed the crew of Apollo 17. That's really touched him. He's seen that every time he's come and gone up and down the ladder. Put on there by the launch crew at Cape Kennedy. He's up on the surface turning on different equipment. Jack Schmitt will follow very closely.
On and read. Bob, it reads 222. 262-207. 222-262-207.
Okay, I copy that, Gino.
Holy.
So Cernan's out on the surface of the moon, beginning now.
We can move to the east.
While,
a little bit anyway.
While Schmidt is climbing out to join him, I'd like to bring you this greater description from one of the scientists right here on Earth who is evaluating what has been discovered so far. This orange soil about disappearing that's the residue of an ancient volcano which they discovered yesterday. Jim Parisi talked to one of the geologists who trains these astronauts right here, works with geologist astronaut Dr. Jack Schmidt. And here's how Elbaz explains what's been discovered so far. Dr. Elbaz, tell us what the possible significance could turn out to be in terms of this orange rock that was found on the second EVA.
The orange rock and also some of the water colors and the red colors may represent an actual alteration of the lunar surface material. And that would happen by the gases from the lunar interior coming through the rock with perhaps some water vapor along with them, and the gases would act chemically on the rock and alter the chemical composition, and that is oxidize the iron and give you iron oxide. And these are the colored minerals, and therefore it would be close to the fumarolic action that is familiar to us in volcanic regions on the Earth.
And what's the significance of that?
The fumarolic action happens very late in the...
Is this a surprise?
It is indeed a surprise to see that particular type of rock, that particular type of formation. We had hoped that the site would have some young rock, but maybe it is even younger than what we found.
Now, would you say that this geologically is a vital find?
Indeed, it's a very vital find because it will give us a time scale on how long was the moon volcanically active, and that will also give us a feel for how much is the relationship between the Earth and the moon. So I believe it is a very great find.
Dr. Elbaz, would you say at this point that you have found as wide a time scale as you hoped you would find on Apollo 17, that is a lunar time scale?
Yes, indeed. Although I cannot really say right now that the rocks and the materials are going to be as old as 4 billion years or older, but we know now at least we have the more important time scale rock above the longer.
A billion being 1,000 million in this case. How would you rate the significance of the finds of Apollo 17 with the finds of the previous Apollo missions?
Of course, every mission adds something new. On the Apollo 13, we had many great finds, and on Apollo 16, told us a lot about the lunar highlands, which would be comparable to our continents on Earth. But I really think now with Apollo 17, we will wrap it up, meaning that we will really know a lot about the history of the lunar surface, maybe more than what we accomplished in only one single mission before.
Thank you very much. I've been talking with Dr. of the astronauts. This is Jim Parisi, Voice of America at the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston, Texas. I believe that Jack Schmidt is now joining us on the surface. He's going to come right out from the engine. The first thing they do is go over and power up the little rover. They have just done that, and there comes the television picture from the camera, which is mounted up. Oh boy, that's a good yet. Sort of a snowy picture. I presume that this tweak up their tuning of this as time goes on. They're turning at work back near the rover. The camera is now panning around to the north. The two astronauts are on the surface together. See a large shadow there. Shadow of the American flag planted just after their touchdown stop. Let's listen.
And 17, if you guys are interested, there's that is 58 feet long tonight.
Sun has risen a bit.
How many years is that, Bob?
What do you
Yeah, I don't know. I take my glove off and see.
That'll be a shot on the moon.
Yeah,
Schmidt on the Slade. Back around to the south of the
I gained it already.
TV is tight. We can see that now very
With all the people who played with the band, sang with the band.
Leaders. You can see him leaning in and looking at the instruments. Probably hear him reporting.
The battery one is 35 degrees, and the battery two is 90. So open it. You dragged over that locking device. Okay, let me just see what we got to do here.
We just note that Ron Evans, who's orbiting overhead, and we had a good bit of conversation with him earlier in the day. In fact, he was hard at work conducting orbital experiments from up there in space, orbiting around the moon, while Cernan and Schmidt slept. Would cause and board. However, this lunar sounder, this radio radar device, which is shooting electronic energy into the surface as he orbits and then reflecting it back and measuring it, that's working very, very well. A device made by the same company that builds the Apollo command module.
Before the rain gets on the cosmic ray experiment, they like to retrieve it. We'll leave it in the ETB during the traverse.
That was a instruction from
just be a nominal retrieval. We'll put it in the ETB.
instruction from Ron Parker, who's the capsule communicator out there. Mission control. That deep voice you hear is that of Ron Parker. He's a scientist astronaut, an astronomer. Cernan's putting one of the equipment bags, one of the sample bags, on the rover. This is just a big nylon or Teflon bag into which they will put all of the small rock and soil samples they pick up. There's a dispenser, very much like a paper cup dispenser, with plastic bags on it. Each of these bags has a number, a documentary number, for labeling each sample picked up. Schmidt is taking a panoramic view.
Back on your camera on here.
Pictures of the around the landing site, including the rover and the band. He was already
There with the camera. When you get on the camera, how about getting some light? For about a minute.
Once we get some of the sticky gray tape to work on the electrical properties receiver.
Okay,
it's the thing that you're
there. Yeah, we did.
25 minutes into this third and last of the explosions on the moon from the Apollo program. Apollo 15 and last for the Apollo program. It may be the end of the century before man again lands on the moon. Possibly in the 1980s, possibly in the 1990s. Unlikely before the 80s.
Short count under the LMP sheet.
He's reading off a checklist. That's Cernan.
Okay, I gotta put that cat defense down here. I gotta get a rammer, hammer. Bob, what bag do you want on the LMP?
What bag do you want on the AMP? That's the Lunar Module 5.
I think 8 went in either 4 or, either 5 or 4.
That was Cernan. Voice of America is bringing you coverage throughout the evening of this third extravehicular excursion, EVA, extravehicular activity. We often call it a walk on the moon. We call it an excursion, a traverse, an outing, a geological expedition. You'll hear us calling it all of these things. Cernan and Schmidt activate the rover, the lunar automobile, and go off on a long tour. Let's see how far away they get tonight. They get some 3.5 to 4 kilometers, 4.5 kilometers distance, but they will cover some 15 to 20 kilometers in driving a circle around to the north toward what's called the North Massif, north of their landing site.
5-foot stereo pairs of the
This is Schmidt.
configuration.
Copy. Yep.
In case you're wondering, if you don't confuse it with a rock, it's in bag 106.
Copy that. To get on the moon and move.
Okay, take some great tape over to the receiver team, and with the rover, the fact that there is some Velcro missing up front there, we're told the cover's down. We'd like to take the two covers together on the middle there, you know, the two sides overlap in the middle of the box. Take those two together. Short piece about an inch long to do it if they're clean.
That Parker's telling him what to do to that set.
I doubt the tape will fit because it's just like that, so I'm not able to go over with one piece to clean it and another piece to tape it. Okay. The question beyond that is there Velcro to hold one of those flaps down or not? No. Okay, so both these are flaps, I think. Yeah. Well, what happened was that the tape, the more Velcro on there apparently came loose and it stuck to the upper Velcro. Okay, I understand that. In that case, we like to think
Velcro is a fabric material with two surfaces. One surface has hooks, the other surface has eyes, and when you press it together, it sticks. This has been used extensively in the space program, particularly for astronauts when they're weightless, so that they can make things adhere and not float around in the cabin. Took about an hour and a half to get the suits on and get outside.
And now our reference is a minor solar flare, which represents no danger to the crew, but could affect the very sensitive cosmic ray experiment. Well, probably not anymore, and we would like to see it so.
We're talking about a
Solar flare.
sending some radiation across this landing site.
Your bags would have
There's no radiation field, as does Earth. We here on Earth are protected by the solar phenomena. By the Van Allen radiation belt. The moon has no such protective magnetic shield around it, as does the Earth. So if the sun emits, or if cosmic forces emit some sort of energy, it can come swooping right across the moon, right where the astronauts are. Their suits and spacecraft are designed to protect them from small meteorites, but some of this cosmic radiation is an unknown quantity. We've been broadcasting to you the description of the beginning of the third exploration of the moon by Gene Cernan and Jack Schmidt. We'll be reporting to you hourly throughout the evening hours as they go off on the rover to explore more interesting material here in the taurus-littrow Highlands. This is Rhett Turner in Houston.
In the early stages of the astronauts' third and final moon excursion, we conclude this segment of the Voice of America's live coverage of the flight of Apollo 17. The astronauts will stop at various stations to activate experiments and gather samples on their way to North Massif and back. The Voice of America will broadcast live specials on the progress of EVA-3 at approximately 10 minutes past the hour on many of these frequencies. We will interrupt the regular programs when developments warrant. Our thanks to VOA Space correspondent Rhett Turner at Houston.
Astronauts are making their final moon excursion, planting man's footsteps on the lunar surface, perhaps for the last time this century. Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt have been out of their lander for about 30 minutes, and they're expected to be on the moon's surface for a total of about 6 or 7 hours or so. The Apollo 17 will blast off from the moon Thursday night, with AFN joining a major American network for that coverage at 11:45 p.m.
Receiver will pick up these waves from several kilometers under the surface and actually deliver information on the constituency of the depths of the moon. They were an hour late beginning tonight, but that was planned after a good sleep period last night. So it's expected that they will be able to go for the full schedule 7 hours during this excursion. We're outside now about 45 minutes. Let's tune in live from the moon. Jack Schmitt and Gene Cernan as they go about their activities.
Okay, stop. Ready to go. At 2 meters to the west of the north line.
Copy that.
Yeah, I guess I'm certainly within 5 meters of the top now.
Okay, we'll get that in the photos. Going to the transmitter. This,
And Gene,
radio low gain located, oriented. Texas to mission control.
it's oriented, 355, and my heading is 352.
The question was from mission control. How is the low gain on the rover oriented? How is it aiming for the
And the recorder on, both switches on, and then tape the cover down. Okay, good work. I don't know if that tape is at all. On and on.
The taping down this,
Okay, tape down. Forward, left. Thank you. And then I get done for the on. Thank you. Roger on that. Okay, Bob, and every set has been, every set is now off. And I'm all geared up. Okay, copy that. And we're ready for you guys to roll.
ready for both of them to get on the rover now and start out on
Okay, what's the first range and bring to the rover tempo? Thank you. Okay, it'll be 185 and 1.5 on the range.
That's good. But now what Cernan was asking for
185 and 1.5.
He's supposed to pick up a heading at 185 degrees and go 1.5 kilometers. This is for their first stop. It's good apparently getting back on the round. We have television only when
you're looking pretty from here, you know.
the rover is stopped and the special handling antenna is pointing back forward. Anytime the rover stops,
Okay, I'm on.
then we will have
Okay,
live.
that was good. No, that was well, okay.
Got it, Jack.
Got it. 185 and 1.5, I'm going to hit on about 2. We ought to go right through Joe. Okay, indeed, after the driving fairly slow, we'll go the first 300 meters and a mark at the end of the antenna.
Another instruction from mission control.
What's it, Jack? What's it? Finally. Keep going.
Now he's turned on the transmitter that's to
Okay, so far. Keep going.
send radio waves down into the surface. Take that up I think the tape that he had to use was on his this surface electrical properties receiver is mounted on the rover. It picks up the radio waves that bounce back from beacons in the surface, several kilometers deep, hopefully.
Okay, we'll give you a hack, Bob.
Rover going on a heading of 185. That's south of the present location.
A little. Yeah, I'm running a track. Same track, exactly.
Kilometer and a half away.
Okay, we're starting, Bob. Mark it. Copy that. And the crew's on the way to Station 6. Station 7 is nearby and east of Station 6. If you're far indicating, we got a big hole up here.
I stand corrected.
Okay.
We're going in the reverse of heading of south. 185 is the heading back to the lunar module from their objective. They're actually going on the reciprocal of that
long boulder trail up north of the sea. Off with me. Oh, if you will, we think you're beyond your east of Rudolph quite a ways.
They're headed north. This is the main direction of the traversal.
I think you ought to know where we are by now, Bob.
These headings, when those are read out, that will obviously be the headings back to the home base, the lunar module.
Sorry, Bob, I couldn't get in here. We're past the end of the antenna and we're south or northeast. Okay, give me a mark. Or a mark when you pass the antenna. I gave you a mark when I started.
That's so.
And it took about 20 seconds to get to the end. Okay, copy that.
And throughout the extravehicular activity excursion, we'll report each hour from the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. This is Rhett Turner.
You're listening to the Voice of America's live coverage of the flight of Apollo 17. We will return to the Manned Spacecraft Center in about 15 minutes for another report on the astronauts' final moon expedition. Meanwhile, NBC correspondent Peter Hackett has this report on the vehicle that the astronauts Cernan and Schmidt are using for their lunar exploration. Imagine a little car about the size of a Super Beetle Volkswagen, able to withstand the heat of a bright sun, which can get as high as 250 degrees on the moon, and operate in a vacuum with only 1/6 of the Earth's pull of gravity. On the moon, this 10-foot-long, $8 million super buggy weighs only 77 pounds. Together, the astronauts in their bulky suits weigh considerably more. Lunar Rover 3 has all the safety devices needed for moon travel, from seat belts to its own computer-driven navigation system, because there just aren't any road signs or hot dog stands as landmarks to guide you around the moon. If any of its 4 individually powered wheels go out, Rover can run on electric power to 3 or even 2 wheels. Rover has a range of about 57 miles and a top speed of just under 9 miles an hour. It turns on a dime, backs up, as well as moves forward. The sad part of the Rover story is that, like the lunar landers, they all have to stay on the moon forever. Someday, I suppose, some future moon explorer may come across one of the 3 moon cars parked up there. With some new batteries, they tell us, Rover could probably be started up once again. Presumably, that future moon man could get a real price break if he wanted to pick up a used moon car. The salesman probably wouldn't have much trouble unloading one of them. None of the 3 will have more than 25 miles on the odometer, plenty of extras, including wired wheels, and a super sundial in case the navigation system goes out. The first time is an economy car. It'll cost you almost $500,000 a mile. Peter Hackett, NBC News, New York.
It's 7 o'clock in Central Europe. Apollo 17's moon exploration just about finished. Henry Kissinger flies home to report to the president on Vietnam truce talks. Harry Truman takes a turn for the worse. U.S. share of the United Nations budget is reduced. Bargain days probably ahead for transatlantic air travelers.
The 7 o'clock report An expanded summary of world developments compiled from the wires of the AP and UPI with reports from the major American networks, sports, and stock market activity.
Good morning, this is Milt Fullerton in Frankfurt. Astronauts Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, perhaps the last men ever to set foot on the moon, are about to complete their final excursion on the lunar surface. They're preparing now to enter the lunar lander Challenger, following a third exploration of a volcanic valley and a mile-high mountain called North Massif. In this latest excursion, the two spacemen gathered many rock samples which have proven surprising to scientists on the ground. Whereas earlier samples had shown signs of being compacted by pressure, the latest find appears to have been formed by the cooling of molten materials. If that proves accurate, a few scientific theories could go out the window as researchers on Earth seek more clues to the moon's origin. The moonwalking astronauts, about to close the Challenger's hatch on an historic era, will take their normal 8-hour rest break inside the module before beginning preparations for liftoff from the moon. That event is scheduled to occur shortly before midnight. Live coverage is planned by AFN beginning at 11:45 p.m. Central European Time. Cernan and Schmitt then will be joining their teammate, Ronald Evans, in moon orbit. Evans has been conducting experiments of his own there for the past couple of days. But judging by UPI newsman Paul Roberts' report on a single aspect of them, Evans has encountered at least one earthly problem.
One of the many duties of command ship pilot Ron Evans while orbiting the moon is to operate the photo equipment on board. During the operation of the giant 610mm panoramic camera, Evans made a common mistake. When he completed his orbital science experiment and checked the camera lens, he found he had the wrong lens opening. This explanation was offered.
I think what happened is it must have been holding the thing by the lens or something, or I bumped the in-stop thing somehow.
The 1650-frame, 70-pound film cassette will be retrieved by Evans from the instrument bay during a spacewalk while Apollo 17 is earthward bound. This is Paul Roberts at Cape Kennedy.
So, astronaut Ronald Evans remains in orbit around the moon. He's to be joined there later tonight by Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, who are just winding up their final Apollo 17 moonwalk, perhaps even the final one of the century.
Central European time is 3 o'clock. The Allies push President Thieu's peace plan at the Paris talks.
AFN News from the wires of the AP and UPI.
Good afternoon, I'm David Minot. Astronauts are resting in preparation for today's lunar liftoff and rendezvous in moon orbit. Ronald Evans in the orbiting command ship will be the first to begin his working day with preparations for departure from the lunar surface. Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt get back on the job later on by discarding unneeded equipment from their lunar module. Cernan and Schmitt completed their third and final surface exploration early today. During their 3 days on the moon, they have set records for time on the surface and distance covered. They'll be returning to Earth with about 300 pounds of soil and rock samples. It's 6 o'clock in Central Europe. Vietnam peace negotiations in Paris take a turn for the worse. So does former President Truman in Kansas City. And on the moon, Apollo 17 astronauts prepare to end the last planned exploration of the lunar surface.
The 6 o'clock report, an expanded summary of world developments, including today in Europe, compiled from the wires of the AP and UPI, with reports from the major American networks.
Good evening, I'm David Minot. The moon for perhaps the last time in the 20th century today, and as two of the three astronauts ended their exploration, they unveiled a plaque that reads, "May the spirit of peace in which we came be reflected in the lives of all mankind." Navy Captain Eugene Cernan and civilian geologist Harrison Schmitt made the declaration before boarding the lunar ship Challenger for the last time, 3.5 years after American astronauts first stepped on the moon to open an unprecedented era of adventure and exploration. NBC News reports the astronauts are asleep at this time, getting some much-needed rest prior to blasting off from the lunar surface tonight.
The Apollo 17 astronauts ended man's first exploration of another world last night and have gone to sleep for the last time on the moon with their landing craft packed with secrets of the past in the form of lunar rocks and dirt. Their 3-day tour of the volcanic taurus-littrow Valley was the last American expedition now planned beyond Earth orbit. The chief astronaut, Donald D. Slayton, who headed the flight corps for this country's manned space effort, was in mission control for a few goodnight words. Commander Cernan told Slayton,
"We're just cleaning up a few minor things, and we'll actually probably be asleep in the next 10, 15 minutes. Okay, sleep good. You had a lovely day. Thank you, boss. Sorry to keep you up so late, but appreciate it very much. We're enjoying it. Okay, I'm going off here."
The Apollo 17 astronauts heard a blast off from the moon at 5:56 p.m. Eastern Time. Jay Barbary, NBC News, Cape Kennedy.
AFN's live coverage of the astronauts leaving the moon will begin at approximately 11:45 tonight, Central European Time.
It's 11 o'clock in Central Europe. President Nixon reorganizes his Domestic Advisory Council.
AFN News from the wires of the AP and UPI.
Good evening. This is Paul Macco reporting from Frankfurt. In just a few moments, astronauts Harrison Schmitt and Eugene Cernan, who may go down in history as the last two men to walk on the moon in the 20th century, will blast off from the lunar surface and prepare to redock with their command ship, America. While Cernan and Schmitt were involved in 3 explorations of the moon, their companion, Ron Evans, continued in orbit taking photographs and conducting scientific experiments. In just a few seconds, we'll go to Group W News for live coverage of the liftoff from the surface of the moon of the Apollo 17 lunar module Challenger.
You go for K2. Ready?
Apollo 17's lunar module is ready to leave the moon. The last time such an event will take place for at least another 15 years. That is, for an American spacecraft. Of course, the Russian plans are not known. Perhaps these vacating the moon, these astronauts vacating the moon will lead to a Russian flight sometime in the next 5 or 6 years. At least some of the experts think that's what will happen. But at any rate, at the moment, the lunar module Challenger is being worked up to speed and ready for liftoff. Let's listen to some of the conversation.
System A, ascent speed 2 open. Monitor here. Okay, System A, main stop close.
That's astronaut Gene Cernan as he goes over his checklist. The astronauts have been working up the ship for the past 2 hours, getting its circuits up to speed, checking communications, making certain their suits are operating, and seeing that the lunar samples, some 330 pounds worth, are in place for the ride. It will not be a long ride into a safe orbit for the lunar module. The ascent stage engine, that is the cabin section's engine, will burn for 7 minutes and 20 seconds, getting them up to a safe altitude to begin their climb to the command ship. Once it has vaulted them into that attitude, the engine will shut down and they'll continue coasting on up to the altitude at which the command ship is riding. This will take about an hour and a half to 2 hours. It'll be one complete revolution of the moon as they continue to climb, chasing after the command ship.
We're at 7:54 and counting.
Cernan reporting that they are go
for liftoff.
And there's Houston repeating that they are, indeed, checking out the command center. They are go for liftoff.
Roger, understand. Challenger, go for liftoff.
Commander Gene Cernan.
And about 7 minutes and 30 seconds away from lunar liftoff by my clock, Jim.
Eric Engberg, here we've seen for the last few days quite an exciting time. 75 hours on the surface of the moon, the last American exploration of the moon, and in probably one of the most geologically rich areas that any American crew has ever set foot on. It's been an exciting time.
And filled with surprises, some of which we won't know exactly how devastating they were until we get those rocks back to Earth and have a look at them. But even on the basis of what Jack Schmitt, the first geologist to get to the moon, has reported, scientists here on Earth are very excited about the prospects for what they're going to find when
the astronauts do return to Earth.
We'll come back to them in a moment. This is Jim Slade with Eric Engberg at Group W's Apollo 17 headquarters in Washington. We'll continue with our coverage in a moment.
Holiday greetings from the American Forces Network, Taiwan. It is customary in Taiwan during the Yule season to see a combination of customs. Some people will celebrate in the traditional Western way, including Christmas trees and wreaths in their home, lights and festive attire, and of course exchanging gifts. However, most people are making plans for Chinese New Year and the annual bonus of a month's pay. The youngsters pay their respects to their elders and will receive their hongbao, or little red envelopes of cash for being so respectful. Later comes the special foods, festivities, and of course, the dragon dance. No matter when you were born, everyone is a year older with the coming of the Chinese Lunar New Year in February. It's our 1973, the Chinese Year of the Cow. The younger generation celebrates both holidays, and in Taiwan, it's a very festive time from now until the Chinese year 62. And that is one of the customs of our host country, Taiwan. From the personnel of the American Forces Network, Taiwan, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all.
This is the most exciting time, this liftoff from the surface of the moon. They're using one little engine, the ascent stage engine, which will burn at full bore. There is no throttle on it. It will light up and go just like a skyrocket. It will burn for 7 minutes and 20 seconds, and the computer will shut it off then, and they will coast on up to orbital altitude where they'll redock with a command ship. On the way, their balance and trim, and what little steering they have to be doing on the way up to orbit will be done by the reaction control engines on the side, the little 100-pound thrusters that balance the ship and turn it and adjust its course. You can actually get a little bit of speed out of those things, too.
And this is an engine which has always worked and which always has to work. It's one of the unusual aspects of the space program in that it's one of the few things that is absolutely essential to completing the mission and getting the astronauts home, that there is no redundancy built in for. There is no second backup system for the ascent engine.
Of course, it's one of the simplest engines in the program.
I'll get the master arm. We already are boxed. You'll get 400 plus 1. Okay, and I'll get the camera, and okay, at 10 seconds I'll hit the abort stage, followed by the engine arm to ascent.
They've conversed with Ron Evans as he passed over the landing site. He says he's ready for them to come back. He's been up there by himself for nearly 75 hours conducting his own science program, one that has already been credited as being spectacularly successful.
About 4 minutes until liftoff, and at the moment of liftoff, the command module with Evans on board will be just about over the landing site. One quick rendezvous, and they'll be back together again.
This is the direct ascent rendezvous that was practiced in Gemini. We've done it a couple of times in Apollo.
We have an awful lot of noise.
It doesn't require an awful lot of orbital adjustment on their way up. It just is, it's simply a continuous climb until they climb into orbit and come out facing the lunar module, or I should say the command ship. The lunar module facing the command ship, up under it, facing it, and then docking.
3 minutes now till liftoff. Everything looks good.
Okay, Jeff. Noise check.
3 minutes to go to liftoff, and it's all looking very well.
Okay, Jeff B.
The voice you'll hear out of the command center will be Douglas Ward in Houston. He'll be narrating portions of the launch course that we need to know.
On Bravo. Okay, Houston, Challengers at 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
Roger, Challenger. Everything looks great down here.
Correct. Okay.
The astronauts do not steer this spacecraft through the liftoff. It's done by automatic guidance systems with the primary guidance system in their hands to back up in case any tweaking up, as they like to call it, would have to be done. They could steer in if a mistake was being made by the computer. However, that's never happened before either. 35.
Did you lock clear, America? This is Challenger. We're coming up on 210 from liftoff.
Which wouldn't be enough to get the spacecraft off the surface of the Earth.
That's right.
But since the moon's gravity is only 1/6 that
we'll be with you shortly.
Conversation with
Jack.
Challenger
Double check your
of America.
Breaker. Check. Okay, master arm is on.
Ron Evans has come over the horizon, or around the hill, as they say, and has now made contact with his companions on the ground, and they telling him that they will be with him shortly. Indeed, they will. About a minute and a half from now, they're going to start up. And by 7:53 Eastern Time, they should be in position for docking.
Hey, you got 367. You want to pick up the camera just before I hit aboard stage.
The conversation now is mainly between themselves. This is the one phase of the mission, one of the few phases of the mission where the people on the ground really can't help them. It all has to be done internally.
1 minute, and we look good.
Aboard the lunar module. The people on the ground, of course, are monitoring the systems.
Step from orbit. Okay, 1 minute, Houston. We're 50 seconds now, and we're go. Yeah, looking good here. I'll get that at 30. Okay? Camera's not going to run. Without me holding it.
15 seconds.
The average speed, 20 seconds. Shoot. Okay, hey, let's get off. Forget the camera. 10 seconds. Port stage. Ignition.
And there they go.
Right away, Houston. That's your good. Ag start.
Up and away from taurus-littrow. Beginning to
pitch over.
Gain speed.
You have good thrust.
The pitch over when the spacecraft leans over and begins to climb into the angle of attack it needs to gain an orbit.
308 your number. Take out to 1,500 feet. And 8 Scott looks good.
Roger, we've lost data right now, but we'd like aft on me, please.
Continuous climb, steady burn of that little engine.
40 seconds in, we're going. Comes right over the top of Camelot.
Over the top of their target crater now.
We show an altitude of 2,700 feet.
Awful on a static, Jack. We break lock? Yep. How'd you get it on an Omni or something? Yeah, I got it on the Omni.
Roger, Challenger, you're loud and clear. Both systems look good. You're right on the line.
Should be about 145 and minus 47.
Both the basic and the automatic systems look good.
Altitude 5,500 feet.
Get calm. I will.
Continuing to climb away from taurus-littrow. At 5,500 feet, they hadn't yet cleared the tops of the mountains, but they had an open space ahead of them for that.
Degree. We're nearing 8,000 feet altitude.
Now they are clear.
That engine performing very well.
Tallest mountain was 7,000 feet. They're clear of obstructions and on their way out. But a long climb.
Houston, we're in the blind and we're go.
Roger, we'd like the AGS to auto.
Okay, I got good luck. No. Trying to hold. Okay, Houston, coming up on 2 minutes.
Challenger, Houston, go at 2 minutes. We'd like AGS smoke control auto. Over.
Climbing away nicely, and everything
you watch
is
the table, Gino.
in good shape.
I'm watching it. Just get calm if you can.
That engine needs to burn for them for another 4.5 minutes.
Challenger, Houston, how do you copy? Houston.
Okay, Houston, Challenger, go. Coming up on 2:30. We're through 19K.
Roger, Challenger, we need 623 plus 10,000 in the AGS. Over.
Well, those are the angles.
Now they're back in communication.
How about an Omni? I tried it. I've got
Challenger, Houston, aft Omni, please. Would you relay America?
Apparently they're not.
Houston, 3 minutes. The Challenger's go. We're through 25K.
They're sending the message through the command ship back down to them. Meantime, you'll hear that the astronauts...
I tried it, Ron, and it doesn't hold.
The astronauts are continuing to report their condition. understanding that Houston can still hear them.
Right on the money on trajectory, both systems are go, over.
Okay, Houston in the blind, Challengers go, coming up on 325 and a 30K.
They say they're transmitting in the blind because they can't copy Houston, but that's not a significant fact since there's nothing Houston can do for them now anyway.
Go aft on me.
That's right. They have no control other than to advise them on the condition of their spacecraft.
They are in aft on me right now.
There's Evans. They're relaying through the command
Challenger, we're reading them 5 by.
Okay, we're reading you, Houston.
Okay, Jack, we need a 623 plus 10,000. Jack, give us a 623 plus 10,000.
Okay, 4 minutes, Challengers go with the 37K.
37,000 feet.
You're looking good here.
Okay, that's it.
3 more minutes to go. And they're safely on their way.
About 3 minutes from shutdown now.
Got about a 716 burn, Jack.
Altitude approaching 40,000.
About 282 coming through 41K.
41,000
430,
feet. Up the moon now.
Great, 41K.
50,000 feet to be absolutely safe.
73 is good.
Come away to adventure. Come away to excitement. Come away to the American Forces Religious Retreat House in Berchtesgaden. There will be a Catholic retreat the 11th through the 15th of December, and there will be a Protestant retreat the 15th through the 22nd of this month. Contact your local chaplain for more retreat information. The 11th through the 15th for Catholic, and the 15th through the 22nd for a Protestant retreat. This is AFN Stuttgart.
Conservative and safe, over.
Understand, and we're going 5, and we're now on a 48K.
Very soon they'll have their safe altitude. They probably could coast to it by now.
Camera stop. Okay, burn time's going to be about 18 or 19. 718 or 719, Jack. Okay.
Once again, there's no steering at this point.
About a minute and a half to go. We look good. Altitude 50,000 feet.
It's all automatic here.
Things and anchor looking good. A little bit north.
Okay, they have 50,000 feet.
Hey, Houston, 540 Challengers coming through 52K, and Ping says 126 on the H-stack. We're go. Ag flags the plane.
Roger, Challenger, your trajectory is right on the money. Both systems are go.
They're in absolutely excellent shape.
Get a good shut-off time now. Okay, it'll be 20. 720 on the shut-off. Okay, we're already terminated AFN feed. You got 1,300 to go. Okay, let's double-check everything now. You got that. You want it at 200 feet. Engine arm off with 200 to go.
Here's where Cernan takes over manually.
Right together.
It's a pilot module now nearing orbital velocity about 4,500 feet per second.
On 57K.
Roger, and we agree with the...
900 rounded out nicely. Okay, 8 shots running right out to the target. 700 to go.
Okay, normal shutdown and normal trim procedures.
Roger, normal shutdown, normal trim. Give me a hack at 200, Jack. Okay, it's 500 now. Mark it, and the AFN feeds are already terminated. Okay, very good.
Land velocity now nearly a mile a second.
Passing 59K. 300. Stand by.
Coming up on shutdown.
100 to go. Mark it. Okay, engine arm is off. Okay, stand by for shutdown. 80. 50. Shutdown. Okay, auto shutdown. Auto shutdown.
And they're home free for that part of the mission. For the next 2 hours, they'll be coasting up to meet Ron Evans. We'll get back to them in just a moment. This is Jim Slade with Eric Engberg. We'll continue with Group W's coverage of the flight of Apollo 17 in a minute.
A soldier cross-trains from the infantry and becomes an airborne medic. Stateside, he uses his training while still in the Army to help his community. How? With Project MAST. Basically, it's military assistance to traffic. It's a program that utilizes military vehicles and personnel to quickly move accident victims from the scene of an accident to a hospital. So he's involved saving lives, and at the same time building a better military, one that the people want.
Minutes from now to put the LEM in the proper.
The astronauts now will do a small tweak burn to even up their continuing climb, to put them on precisely the right trajectory to meet up with Ron Evans in a little while.
I would guess that some of the proudest and happiest people in the United States of America today must be the men who designed and built that ascent engine, a device that had to work and that has worked every time that it's been used, and of course will not be used again, very likely.
Of course, we won't do any commercials, but it has been a very dependable little machine because it's worked every time it's ever been called upon to fly. The only problem that ever occurred with the LEM was on Gene Cernan's first flight to the moon, which was on Apollo 10. And on that mission, they were out there to test the LEM around the moon, and Cernan and Tom Stafford flew it down to within about 10,000 feet of the lunar surface and brought it back up. A simulation of this very activity that's going on right now. And an inadvertent throwing of a wrong switch took them for a roll. As a matter of fact, the thing did slow rolls.
At that point that Cernan uttered a memorable comment over the communications loop, which he was later taken to task for and apologized.
Well, it was a salty sailor phrase, and at the moment he forgot himself, I'm sure. They are climbing very nicely on their way up for the next 2 hours. They will be in a continuing climb up to about 60 miles, where astronaut Evans is now flying in the command ship waiting for them. They've talked with him a couple of times today, and he's reported that the command ship America is in excellent shape and just waiting to take aboard that 330-some pound of rock and dirt and equipment that they're bringing back with them. The type of stuff that is sending chills through science laboratories all over the world tonight, because some of the things that have been found here at taurus-littrow on this mission don't match up with some of the theories that have already come out of the lunar exploration. And there's going to be a lot of rewriting of data, apparently, when this material gets back and goes into analysis.
Okay. And, of course, the remainder of the flight, pretty much the profile that you've come to expect from previous Apollo missions. Following the docking of the LEM with the command ship later on this evening in the east. Okay. Tomorrow, the LM ascent stage will be impacted on the moon. On Saturday, the command ship will leave moon orbit to return to Earth, that long 2.5-day coast back to Earth on Monday and Tuesday, or rather on Sunday and Monday. And on Monday, the astronauts will be holding a news conference from space. On Tuesday, they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere with splashdown in the Pacific south of American Samoa.
We'll catch them again in just a moment. This is Jim Slade with Eric Engberg. We'll continue with Group W's coverage of the flight of Apollo 17 in a minute.
Decorating your Christmas tree? To make sure your Christmas is a big success this year and for years to come, be sure to heed the following holiday safety message. If ornaments fall from your Christmas tree, be sure to pick up all the pieces and vacuum the area as soon as possible. The sharp edges can cause serious internal injuries if the broken pieces are swallowed by a toddler. They also provide a potential for cut feet and hands. Bruises and cuts are par for the course, with gifts such as skates, bikes, or skateboards. But you can prevent serious injury by adequate supervision during the learning period. Above all, remember that the street is not a good place for a trial run. And one final item, when you plug in the lights on your tree, don't overload the electrical circuit.
Apollo 17's lunar explorers now in the cabin stage of their LEM, having left the landing section behind. The foot pad area is still on the moon, standing there. It was their launch platform. The upper half, the cabin section, is now on its way back up to some 60 to 70 miles altitude, where they'll meet up with Ron Evans in a couple of hours. At 7:53, they should be docking Eastern Time. The lunar module is now in a trajectory that will take it up. It will overtake the command ship, pull out in front of it, come up around it. The astronauts will pilot around the command ship a little bit, take a look, inspect it for Evans, take a look at the science machinery installed in the rear of his ship, give him a report, a visual report on that. He will likewise inspect their ship to make sure there's nothing protruding that might cause trouble on the docking, and then they will close dock. They will open up the tunnel between the two. The command ship's nose attached to the roof of the lunar module. Through that tunnel will come all of the treasures they're bringing back from Taurus-Littrow, the two astronauts, their suits, and all the notes they kept while they were down there. It will be closed up, the tunnel closed, the LEM cut off and dashed into the lunar surface near the landing site much later tonight. This is not necessarily the wanton waste it sounds. The dashing into the lunar surface is another known seismic impact to set off the instruments that were left behind by Apollo 17 and the others that preceded. Everything going well with them. We'll continue watching them as they go along. This is Jim Slade for Eric Engberg at Group W's Apollo 17 headquarters in Washington.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from the American Forces Radio and Television Service.
This is the American. It's 11 minutes past 12 o'clock in Central Europe as we will be rejoining AFRTS Washington at 1:50 this morning for live coverage of the docking of the Apollo LEM spacecraft and the command module America. Until then, we now join Tony Pigg in progress.
It's 10 o'clock in Central Europe. A bizarre hijacking episode ends in Montreal.
AFN News from the wires of the AP and UPI.
Good morning, I'm Dan Allen reporting. Team crew aboard the command ship America has jettisoned the lunar module Challenger. The Challenger was guided by mission control in Houston back to the lunar surface, where it crashed a short while ago. After successfully gliding the Challenger to an outer space docking with the America, a feat watched on live TV here on Earth, the three Apollo astronauts spent 3 hours unloading rocks and other geological materials taken from the lunar surface. Much of the U.S. is suffering from harsh weather conditions. Flash flood watches have been posted for a large area of the South. Mudslides resulting from heavy rain have left 20 families homeless in Cumberland, Kentucky. Meanwhile, emergency crews are working to restore broken utility lines in Missouri and Illinois. The lines were hit by a severe freeze early this week. Now, the National Weather Service warns of a new ice and snowstorm developing from Oklahoma to Indiana. It's 11 o'clock in Central Europe. Challenger crashes onto the moon as the last Apollo astronauts prepare for their return to Earth.
AFN News from the wires of the AP and UPI.
Good morning, I'm David Minot. The Apollo 17 Challenger is no more, now reduced to another pile of man-made rubble on the surface of the moon. Apollo 17 astronauts Gene Cernan, Jack Schmitt, and Ron Evans separated their command ship America from the lander, which had carried possibly the last two men to visit the moon this century, to the surface. The jettison and crash of the lander wrapped up another busy day for Cernan and Schmitt, who began it with the end of their third lunar exploration trip across the taurus-littrow area. Then they slept, and after the rest, lifted off the moon in a spray of dust and silvery particles. Cernan and Schmitt rode Challenger into lunar orbit, then linked up Challenger and the command ship America. Once linked, the astronauts were reunited. Cernan and Schmitt spent more than 75 hours on the lunar surface, while Ron Evans orbited above them in the command ship. A short burst of the command ship thrusters carried them a safe distance from the Challenger. Then about 90 minutes later, a spurt from the main rocket on Challenger
sent it smashing into the lunar surface with the impact force of 200 pounds of TNT. The crash was not seen on television from the color camera left on the surface on the lunar rover car, but seismograph readings registered the impact, which was estimated to have occurred about 8 miles from the Apollo landing site. The crash is the last major test the astronauts will make of the scientific instruments they left back on the lunar surface, the last ones put there by men in the $25 billion Apollo program, perhaps the last manned lunar exploration effort of the 20th century.
It's 12 noon in Central Europe. President Nixon charts his next move in Vietnam as Slade goes back to Hanoi, and Apollo 17's 3 astronauts prepare for the long trip home.
AFN News and Sports Roundup, a summary of developments from the wires of the AP and UPI. First, the news.
The astronauts are above it all, circling the moon after 3 days of being on it. They jettisoned their lunar lander, Challenger, early today, sending it crashing into the moon at the same spot they visited, Eugene Cernan and Jack Schmitt, that is. Everything continues to go well for Apollo 17. Cernan and Schmitt blasted off the lunar surface last night and rejoined Ron Evans in the command ship America. America now will head for home and Tuesday's splashdown in the South Pacific.
Central European time is now 1 o'clock.
AFN News from the wires of the AP and UPI.
Good afternoon, this is John Shore reporting. The 3 Apollo 17 astronauts are together again in their command ship America. The lunar lander Challenger was sent crashing back into the moon early this morning. It hit near the Apollo 17 landing site it had just left a few hours before. However, the Challenger did not crash within range of the television camera, which had been left behind in hopes of recording the impact. Astronauts Gene Cernan, Jack Schmitt, and Ron Evans are now in a sleep period. They'll spend today and much of tomorrow in lunar orbit, conducting experiments and photographing the moon's surface. Tomorrow evening, the America's engine will be fired, and the last Apollo moon explorers will begin their long journey home. They are bringing a record amount of rock and soil samples and film. President Nixon issued a statement last night as the Challenger blasted off from the moon to rejoin the America. The president wished the astronauts Godspeed on a safe return to Earth, and he promised that space exploration will continue despite recent cutbacks.
It's 2 o'clock in Central Europe. Slade flies back to Hanoi, saying he's optimistic over chances for a Vietnam peace.
AFN News from the wires of the AP and UPI.
17 astronauts have settled back for their final 2 days in lunar orbit. Spacemen Eugene Cernan and Jack Schmitt blasted off the moon aboard the lunar lander last night to rejoin Ronald Evans in the command ship America. The astronauts will slip out of moon orbit and head for home tomorrow night.
It's 6 o'clock in Central Europe. Private peace talks continue in Paris despite the absence of the top negotiators. Apollo 17's astronauts prepare for the long trip home, and 3 more killings in Northern Ireland.
The 6 o'clock report, an expanded summary of world developments, including today in Europe, compiled from the wires of the AP and UPI, with reports from the major American networks.
Good evening. I'm David Minor. 17 astronauts united again after the Apollo program's final and most bountiful moon landing expedition lingers in lunar orbit today, where the astronauts later on will survey the surface below for still more knowledge. Gone is the landing ship Challenger, which had carried Apollo 17's Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt to the surface for 75 hours, and then returned them safely to the command ship America and to a reunion with Ronald Evans. In the morning hours today, Challenger was thrust away from the command ship, and a radio signal from Mission Control sent it crashing into the moon. CBS News reports that today is cleanup day for the astronauts and that some experiments are scheduled.
Much of the early hours today was spent trying to clean up the lunar dust, which has accompanied the dirty dozen men who have trod the surface of the moon. And the rest of this day and much of Saturday will be spent in lunar orbit, photographing targets down below, turning on the remote sensors in the scientific bay of the service module. Saturday, on the 75th revolution of the moon, they will fire the service engine for the trip home. Crammed into the command ship now is that record haul, the estimated 249.3 pounds of lunar rock and dust. Perhaps the secret of the moon's earlier times is there somewhere, or perhaps it has eluded men and will await another generation of Earthlings that decides, let's go to the moon again, as they did back in the 20th century. This is Reed Collins, CBS News, Space Headquarters, New York.
According to the Houston Space Center, the United States has left more than $515 million worth of junk on the moon in its 6 Apollo trips in 3.5 years. The most expensive things the astronauts were forced to leave behind were 6 lunar modules worth $270 million. Soviet and American engineers have made the first tests on a docking mechanism, which will be used in the joint space mission planned for the last half of 1975. NASA representatives and their Soviet counterparts have carried out the tests on scale models built for the purpose. The plan calls for the launch of 3 Soviet cosmonauts in a Soyuz spacecraft and the pursuit of it by an American craft with 2 astronauts aboard. The 2 ships will rendezvous and link in space during the 48-hour mission.
It's 10 o'clock in Central Europe. Report from Paris of a Vietnam ceasefire within the next 48 hours and a speedy denial from Washington, military and civilian government employees to receive a pay hike, and Apollo 17 astronauts winding up their stints above the moon.
The 10 o'clock report, an expanded summary of world developments compiled from the wires of the AP and UPI with reports from the major American networks.
Good evening, this is Paul Macco reporting from Frankfurt. 17 astronauts are remaining in orbit around the moon until tomorrow night. The extra orbital time will give their cameras and other sensors time to add to the scientific bonanza already produced by the Apollo 17 mission. Sunday, Ronald Evans will walk in space 200,000 miles from Earth to retrieve film cassettes from 2 telescopic mapping cameras and a radar subsurface sounding instrument aboard America. Before Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt left the moon yesterday, Cernan described the lunar surface as looking like a regular garbage dump. UPI News has details.
With the Apollo series drawing to a close, NASA says the United States has left $517.22 million worth of junk on the moon in the past 3.5 years. The most expensive things left behind were 6 lunar modules costing $270 million, 6 science packages worth $130 million, 5 rocket boosters at $20 million each, and 3 lunar rovers that total $6 million. Camera equipment, astronaut backpacks, laser reflectors, and tools left on the lunar surface were worth $11,200,000. But the information derived from the $25 billion Apollo series is considered by scientists to be priceless. This is Paul Roberts at Cape Kennedy.
A quick look at a submarine and an Air Force base in Hawaii are on tap for 12-year-old Kevin Steen, a frail, blonde-haired youth from carefree Arizona, then it's off to Samoa for the splashdown of Apollo 17, guest of the United States Navy. Kevin will be aboard the aircraft carrier Ticonderoga to witness the recovery of the astronauts from the Pacific on Tuesday. Kevin has cancer, and doctors told him late in 1970 that he only had 3 months to live. But Kevin still is going strong. Kevin says he knows he's going to be all right and that someday he'll be an astronaut. This last Apollo flight will not be the end of space spectaculars. Soviet and American engineers today announced in Moscow they have made the first test of a docking mechanism to be used in the joint space mission planned for 1975.